Hey founders, thank you so much for tuning into The Social Life, the place to be for entrepreneurs with a purpose. And if that's you, you're in the right place. One of the things I want to talk about is our first board meeting. This can be such a daunting piece of starting a nonprofit organization. You want to make sure you get things right. You want to make sure that you don't fumble around. But I did fumble, and I fumbled royally, and it was horrible. But thankfully I had a friend on the board, and she walked me through every piece of what I needed to do and how I needed to do it. This is not something that you will just know out of the blue when you go to start your nonprofit organization. It's very different than running a for-profit business, because when you run a for-profit business, you're not thinking about, how you're going to relay all of your information to your board of directors and all the information they need to know about your organization, which actually I think is a pretty good thing. If you had to do it for a business, I think it would be a for-profit business. I think it would be very beneficial. But anyway, that's besides the point. So back to the main point, which is running your first board meeting. I've got a few tips today that I want to share with you that I learned that day and that I felt were very helpful. So my first tip is that it's okay to make a mistake. It's totally fine to make a mistake, whether it's your first board meeting or it's your 100th board meeting. This is something that you are still putting yourself out there, and you're still sharing from your heart, and you're still running the organization in a way that's authentic to you. And there will be mistakes because you're human. So first, let's just take that off the table. You will make mistakes. That's okay. The key is to learn from those mistakes and to get better each time you do your meetings. My tip number 2 is to respect their time. You want to be as clear as you can about the time frame that you need your board there. That way they can plan in their day how long they need to be there, and everyone knows there's a start and end time. So don't just say that your board meeting is going to be at 11 a.m. and you don't have an end time. You want to make sure that you give a start and an end time that both you hold yourself to and the board can hold you to as well. So you want to make sure that you can get all the information you need in that agenda done. For example, my board holds our board meeting from 11:30 to 1 o'clock. But in general, we get done around 12:30 or 12:15. We try to be in and out. Now, if it's going to be a longer board meeting, which for me a longer board meeting means we're going to actually use all of the time allotted, then I do let my board know in advance, like, hey, this one's probably going to run until 1 o'clock. And also they let me know if they need to leave early or if that time it just isn't going to work for them. So it's very important to be clear and respect each other's time, okay? So my third tip is to stay on task, okay? Respect the agenda. The agenda becomes your friend. The agenda is what keeps you on task, and how the minutes are written and everything by your secretary and what you match them up against. It's basically your metric of what have we accomplished during the period of time that we were not together, and what are we looking to accomplish, and all of the things that you need to discuss as a founder of your board come from this agenda. So you don't want to really veer too far off of it. You want to really focus on staying on that agenda. That's just a really quick little tip, but a lot of people will write up an agenda, and I did this as well, as guilty of this. I'd write up an agenda, and then I'd spend a ton of time on one item and do all these brainstorming things and all this stuff that really shouldn't have been done in the meeting. It should have been done outside of the meeting, and then with the information that the board needs to know in the meeting. So don't make that mistake. Go there with your agenda and stick to it and run through it as quickly as you can, allotting enough time for a little discussion on each topic and then moving on. Number 4, I recommend this book called Robert's Rules of Order. It is an amazing book that you can just skim through if you need to or whatever, but it really kind of gives a layout of how a meeting runs and what needs to happen within your meetings from here on out. So your first meeting, you're going to kind of just use this as your tips to get started. But your Robert's Rules of Order will tell you how to open a meeting, how to close a meeting, the types of ways that you can set up your board agenda, the things that need to happen in a meeting, how to motion for something, how to vote on things, what a quorum is, all of those types of things that you'll need to know. And that book is generally pretty cheap. It's an older book, and I'll try to leave a link down below for that book, but that one is really a big key for any founder. Every founder should really have this book in their toolkit just as they get started. So that is a very good book to have. So the fifth thing, my fifth tip is before you start talking about your meeting and everything, you really want to bring the meeting to order. Now, generally, this is the chairman's job. They will bring this meeting to order, and then someone will mark the time that you started your meeting. These things are important for your minutes. When your secretary goes to write their minutes, they need to know these types of pieces of information. It gives your meeting a start and end time, and it lets you look back at like, okay, what do I need to be focusing on when we start our meetings? Are we coming in and we're starting like way later? Are we starting a little bit earlier than our meeting? And it's just good for documentation as well. So make sure that you have a call to order when you start your meeting, even on your first meeting. And that's one of the things that the Robert's Rules of Order will give you, all of that type of information. So read that book. It's really good. Even if you just buy it for like just a quick reference, that was also recommended to me by the friend that was helping me on that actual first board meeting. So number 6, the top thing you'll want to do at your first board meeting is approve those bylaws. One of the things that's really important is you need to at least go over your bylaws, make sure that your board is very aware of what's going on in your bylaws. And generally, this is one of the biggest things that you do in your board meeting, aside from my next tip. But the bylaws are really important because this is really the structure of your organization. This is going to be the Bible by which you guys run your organization. And when you have tough decisions you need to make, you're going to be going back to your bylaws and making sure that they reflect the decisions that you're making and how you're running your organization. So remember that. You're going to want to approve those bylaws as soon as possible. Recommended for the approval at the first meeting, but if that doesn't happen, you can do it at subsequent meetings. But you need to at least go over those bylaws if this is the first time that your board is meeting together. It's good for them to give you their input and all of that so that you guys are aware of what the bylaws say, if there's anything that needs to be changed or retracted or anything. They need to be approved and motioned and all of that at that meeting. So bring those bylaws, let them look over them before they even get there so that you guys can actually move through if they have any questions. And really that's kind of what this first meeting is all about. Now, in addition to your first meeting, my next tip is working on designating your officers. So you may want to, we did this at our first meeting, just like who wants to be what, but what you may want to do is before your first meeting, just send out an email to say, hey, would you be interested in any of these positions, and writing out what the positions require and what they hold. So just to give you a quick run through of what the positions are that are most critical. So generally there's a chairman of the board, president of the board. Those are both the same. You can have a vice president of the board if you want to, but generally you can have just one chairman of the board, and depending on what size the board is. But chairman of the board, vice president, secretary, and then your treasurer. And what each of those do is the chairman of the board will generally open up the board meeting and call everyone to order, and they will run through the agenda. Now, the executive director, which might be yourself as the founder, or if you have a staff member who's an executive director, will talk about specific things that are related to the staff or that have something integral to the organization. But in general, your chairman of the board runs through the entire agenda, and they'll talk about all the things because you may have had a meeting prior with them and they know how things are working. Then you have your secretary. Your secretary would be the person who would be doing all of the minutes and making sure things are recorded, and anything that needs to be relayed to the board generally will go through the secretary. And she would emit, he or she would emit all of the minutes after they have been typed up and written out and all of that for approval. And those minutes are brought to the next meeting, and the cycle starts over and over. The treasurer would be someone who would be going over the financials, who would report on the financials and let everyone know kind of what's going on. Generally, this person may have met with the executive director prior to meeting for the actual board meeting so that they are on board, they understand what's going on with the financials, and then they bring that to the board meeting. So really everybody has kind of a role to play for the organization. Now when you're just starting out, all of those roles might be designated, but you may be the main person who's giving that information since you are the hands-on person in that organization. But I would recommend trying to have people take on some of those roles if they're willing to, and just meeting with them prior or talking to them on the phone about what information they'll need to be relaying. You'll need to designate your officers at that meeting. So that was, I think, 4 officers, chairman of the board. You can do a vice president if you want to, that's optional. And the vice president would just stand in when the chairman can't make it. Then the secretary and the treasurer. So I have 3 on my board. I don't have a vice president. We just have chairman of the board, secretary, and a treasurer. Those are all the types of things that you're going to want to achieve in that first board meeting. I have 3 quick tips that I just want to leave you with. So the first thing is to come with your agenda divided into 2 sections. The first section would be action items, things that need to have action taken. Maybe you need to vote on something, you need to approve bylaws, you need to make decisions about something, and you need your board there. The second piece would be your informational aspects of your board. And this is one of the best, this tip right here was one of the best tips I've ever had, and it came from the same friend that helped me on that board. And really, what it makes you do as a founder is we have a lot of information that we want to impart to our board of directors. But what this allows you to do is really kind of set up your meeting so that you're getting all your action items done at the very beginning. You guys can discuss things and all of that, and then your informational items. You know, obviously you hope to get to all of your informational items, but if you don't, it's okay because you've already gone through all the action items so that you can move forward on your goals for the actual organization. So always try to think in terms of like, what's the action we need to take at this meeting that's most important, and then put that as one of your first agenda items. My second tip is to come with goals. Every time you come to your board meeting, you should have some goals that you really want to attain, or goals that you're working towards, and have an update on some of those goals that you want your board to know about, or that you need them to help you with, or whatever it is that you're looking for. But you always want to have goals as the founder, and you want to be able to relay those goals to your board of directors so that they're on board with what you're trying to do as well. In that first meeting though, you want to come with your goals for the organization, maybe your big vision and how you're planning to get there and what you see. Let them bite off some of those goals too, and look at how they can help you get there, or some ideas they may have towards that. The next thing you want to come with is your startup proposed budget. Now, this is hard to do because you don't really know what your budget's going to be. You don't know the expenses and all of that. But I will have in the academy, I'm having a speaker come on, my own bookkeeper. She's coming on to teach all of you about how to run QuickBooks, how to set up a startup proposed budget, and just kind of like how to set up your books in general, and some things to look at it, like how to reconcile, things like that, that really help the organization run smoothly. So if you're interested in that, you can sign up for the Social Life Diaries, and that is on ashleetate.com. You can just put in your email there, and it'll be in July, I think, when she's coming on to the academy, but it'll be there in perpetuity. So if you happen to miss this, you can still sign up for the academy and then have access to workshops. So I try to bring on experts. I want to show you guys a little bit more. I try to also go in depth with more workshops in the academy. So if you're interested in something like that, go ahead and sign up at ashleetate.com, and we'll get you all set up with the academy. So anyway, moving on to my last tip. My last tip is to ask for help. Do not be afraid of asking for help. You are a new founder and you are running a brand new organization, and many times most people have not run a nonprofit and they don't really know how it's so different from running a for-profit business. And the thing is that your profit is your purpose, right? And so you have a few different audiences than just a customer, and the way you approach that is very different. So if you need help, just ask for the help. There are people who may have served on other boards, or who may have other information that will be helpful to you. Don't worry about trying to go it alone. I want you to really ask your board for help. That's what they're there for. They're there to govern the board. They're there to govern your organization. And they're there to provide that type of help. And this is a place where you can ask. It should be a very safe space for you to get the information and the help that you need in order to build up your organization. So don't be afraid to ask. That's my last tip. Thank you guys so much for watching. If this video helped you, I'd love it if you press the like button, or if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comment section below. I do try to answer every single one of your questions on our comment section. And if you want to join a tribe of others on the same journey that you're on, come join us in the Social Life Tribe, and you can get your invitation at ashleetate.com. So anyway, I hope that I will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for watching. Bye guys.